As Thanksgiving knocks on the door, a dark memory is rushing back to me. I don't celebrate this tradition anymore because of what happened 2 years back. I am a 19-year-old average-height girl currently living in California. My hometown is a small town in Georgia. Being an only child, I have always been a pampered kid. My parents were high school lovebirds who immediately got married after finishing high school. My dad owned quite a lot of land, hence we were more well off than many people living in the town. He inherited his father's house, and from outside, we were the picture-perfect family in everyone's eyes. But what happened inside the house was only known to us. We lived in the outskirts, right beside vast paddy fields. My dad had a Chevy and often drove us to the market whenever we needed things. Even though everyone thought my parents were perfect for each other, they fought like animals every night. I guess with time, the young love died and harsh reality surfaced for them. My dad screamed at my mother, and she abused him in every way possible. Between the two of them, my mom was the most toxic one, I believe. I saw her slapping my dad and pushing him many times, but my dad never raised a hand at her. Our society has this weird mindset that domestic abuse can only happen one way. I love both my parents equally, but whenever my mom hit my dad and screamed at him using obscene language, I hated her. Increasing toxicity led to the usual consequence: divorce. My dad had to bear a lot as my mom went on giving suicidal threats if he divorced her. It was the most disgusting phase of our lives. Our so-called happy family broke apart, and my mom stayed in Georgia, and I came to California with my dad. My dad's lawyer proved how she abused him for years, and I too sided with my dad on this. Tears rolled down his eyes when he got my custody. But one thing I noticed that day, which no one did, my mom didn't say a single word. She stared at me with a blank face for a few seconds and then quietly walked out of the courtroom. That was probably the last time I saw her until I turned 18. And a horrifying tragedy happened last year. My dad didn't keep any contact with my mom after the divorce, but he never stopped me from being in touch with her. I talked to her over the phone at times, and that was it. Sometimes I missed her, but then I realized those painful nights watching my mom hitting and kicking my dad, and my dad bearing this humiliation and insult for my sake. The awful memories of his past hit him so hard that he was scared to fall in love again. He kept to himself and raised me with the utmost care. It was probably my 7th grade PTA meeting when my dad found a new ray of hope in his life. He fell in love again with my English teacher, Melissa. She was a kind lady, and I liked her. They hit it off quite well, and soon she moved in with us. When my mom found out about this, she was obviously not happy. But this time, she didn't create a scene and quietly disconnected the call. It was a week before Thanksgiving. I was sitting in my room going through some brochures, thinking about where to go for college, when my mom called. I picked it up immediately, as it's been a month since I have spoken to her. "Hi, Mom." "Hello, my pumpkin. How are you?" "I'm good. Mom?" "Yes, my dear. Are you all right? I know the time has been hard for you, and trust me, none of us wanted to hurt you. It's just, Dad is happy, and maybe we should all be happy for him." "Oh, you are going to be such a lovely lady." "I know, Pumpkin, and you're right. Can you please put me on speaker and call your dad?" All these years, my parents never spoke after the divorce. My mom never asked for my dad. Hearing her say this, my heartbeat grew faster. I called my dad, and he entered the room along with Melissa. "Hello, Daisy." "Hi, James. Hope you're in good health." "What was it you wanted to talk about?" I know I have done you wrong and never apologized for that. Honestly, I was so ashamed that I couldn't. So here I am asking for one last thing from you and my daughter. This Thanksgiving, will you guys visit me? You can also bring Melissa. I would love to meet her. Just give me one more chance to have a good time with my family. I saw my father's face turn cold, and he looked at me, then at Melissa. He was going to say no when Melissa grabbed his hand and said in a low voice, "She's Courtney's mom, James. She too deserves to spend Thanksgiving with her daughter. And it has been 10 years now, just for a few days." My respect for Melissa grew more that day as I witnessed her kind heart. My dad agreed, and my mom said from the other side of the phone, "See you all at Thanksgiving then." We decided to reach there on the day before Thanksgiving. Stepping into my hometown, I couldn't help but recall all the childhood memories I made here. The green paddy fields still stood there, making our house the only shelter at the outskirts. But due to poor maintenance, I could see the house losing its usual luster. We knocked on the door and my mom opened it in one go, like she was waiting right on the other side. She hugged me tightly and then looked at my dad. "Hi, James. Please, come in." We stepped in and I introduced her to Melissa. Surprisingly, my mom went close to her and hugged her as well. My dad and I were both shocked to see her react so calmly. We all sat down and started to talk. My mom served us homemade lemonade, and after a long time, I felt my family was complete. But this feeling didn't last long, as I realized my mom hasn't changed entirely though. She was constantly bringing up topics involving an incident of their married life and trying to make Melissa feel like an outsider. She went to the kitchen, and my dad started apologizing to Melissa for my mom's mean behavior. I could see them regretting coming here, and I too felt this year's Thanksgiving is not going to be how I expected. I told my dad that we will leave next morning ASAP. He went to the kitchen, probably to tell my mom not to bring up the past in front of Melissa. I took Melissa to my room to cheer up her mood. Getting our support and attention, Melissa's mood elevated and we were laughing and talking like before. 10 minutes went by when my mom came in and stopped. She stared at me and Melissa with a cold face and said, "Oh, you are here. I was looking for you everywhere. You know, Melissa, my daughter is a sweetheart. She and I spent a huge time decorating this room. She often said how no one can replace me in her life. You know what, Daisy? Your daughter is right. No one can replace a mother. But sadly, you had such a beautiful family and you ruined it all." Melissa walked out of the room like a badass, and I saw my mom's face turn red. Somehow, she got a long-needed lesson, and we all sat down for an awkward Thanksgiving dinner. While having the turkey, I found a wishbone. I decided to split it with my dad. My mom said to me, "Be careful what you wish for," and smiled. Honestly, I wished what any daughter would. Harmony between my mom and my dad so that I don't have to choose between them. Somehow, we finished the rest of the dinner and went to bed. It was around 3 a.m. when I heard heavy breath falling on my face. I opened my eyes and saw my mom standing near my bed in the dark. What are you doing here?" I shouted in fear. She gave a very bizarre smile, and her one eye twitched, making her look creepy. Then she said in a calm voice, "I know you wished for our family to be happy again, didn't you, Pumpkin?" Before I could reply to her question, my eyes went to her hands, and I saw she was holding something on both her hands, and the water was dripping from those things. I jumped to the switchboard on the other side and turned on the light. "What have you done?" "You don't have to choose anymore, Pumpkin. Now you will have me by your side forever. What is Thanksgiving without thanking our loved ones for their sacrifice? I am thankful to your father and this bitch for sacrificing their life to reunite a mother to her daughter." I couldn't keep my sanity anymore. I picked up the nightlamp and hit my psycho mom hard on the head. She wasn't expecting this and fell on the floor screaming in pain. I went on hitting her until her brain matter came out. She took away everything from me, and now the one person whom I loved the most, my poor, innocent dad. When I was done with my anger, I called 911 myself. Smeared in my mother's blood, I waited for the cops to arrive. I am the youngest woman prisoner in this high-security facility, with a supposed chance of parole maybe, but I am not going to ask for it. I am going to spend my entire life in this dark cell because I have no one to call family now. The outside world is way scarier than the world inside this prison, and I have had enough. No more family. No more Thanksgiving for me. That goes without saying.
Hey guys, I see many of you commenting on my videos that this channel deserves 1 million subscribers. But I also see the percent of people who watch my videos aren't actually subscribed to the channel. So, if you like the content, want to support my channel, and want to see this channel reach 1 million subscribers, or maybe 500,000 subscribers, Then go ahead, subscribe, and hit the bell icon. It's free, and you can always change your mind later.
Peter didn't have the best relationship with his family. His parents had hoped he'd take over the family store when he became an adult, but he wanted to do more with his life than sell knockoff products to cheap old people in an aging town for the rest of his days. He left his little hometown as soon as he turned 18 to go to college and didn't look back for the entire 4 years it took him to finish his education. Now, at age 20, he had a degree and a stable job, but no one to congratulate him about it. Whether it was because of the holiday spirit finally seeping in or just pure loneliness, Peter couldn't be sure. But he decided on a whim that he'd celebrate his first Thanksgiving in 4 years with the family he left. He tried to contact them first, but was met with no response when he called them with the numbers he had blocked for 4 years. Not all that was surprising, really. A lot can change in 4 years. They must have all changed their phones and contacts during that time. If he wanted to celebrate Thanksgiving with them, he would have to drop by unannounced. But before he returned to his childhood home, he went to buy 4 boxes of the fanciest chocolates he could find to add to the Thanksgiving feast his family must have been having, and to act as a peace offering for the way he left them. Peter's mind raced towards a million different outcomes during the long drive back to his old hometown, accompanied only by the cheesy Thanksgiving-themed songs on his radio. Would his parents be happy to see him again? Or would they be pissed off that he dared to show his face again? What about his little brother Jim or his older sister Annie? For better or worse, he reached his destination before he could decide to back down. Standing in front of that door felt like staring into the abyss, waiting for it to blink back. A growing sense of dread kept him from knocking on the door and summoning his estranged parents back into his life. He would have turned back and drove far, far away had his mother not opened the door first. Instead of the angry scowl he was afraid he'd find on her face, she smiled at him as warmly as ever. Not knowing what to say, he blurted out the first thing that came to mind. "Hey, Mom. Welcome home, dear." There was no malice or resentment in her voice, not even a little bit. She sounded like she was just welcoming him home, the way she always did after he had a long day at school. She led him into his childhood home, and Peter followed her while fighting the tears welling up in his eyes. The dining table was already set. A massive turkey sat at the center of the table, surrounded by mashed potatoes, cornbread, cranberry sauce, and half a dozen of other traditional Thanksgiving dishes. His father, younger brother, and older sister were already seated at the table with clean plates. They were all smiling calmly, as if they'd expected him to return. There was even an empty 5th seat already set up at the table with the necessary plate and utensils for a feast. Jim ran up to him and hugged him tight. Jim had been 7 when Peter left, so he should have been 11 now, and yet his little brother didn't look a single day older than he did the day he left. "Welcome back home, Pete. Took you long enough. Come on, let's eat." The next 2 hours was the most blissful time in his life. None of his family seemed to resent him for leaving. They just brushed off the whole 4 years he spent avoiding them in favor of idle talk that made all the tension he felt before melt away. After stuffing their faces with turkey and mashed potatoes, the newly reunited family put some food on plates to eat in front of the living room television. Peter sat on the single sofa seat with a turkey leg and a wing on his plate, while the rest of the family laid back on the long couch. Back when he was little, before internet streaming became a thing, he'd spend countless hours in front of that same television, watching whatever came on with his family. Now, he was finally doing it again, though he couldn't help but feel like something was off. The annual Thanksgiving football game started playing on the TV, and Peter finally figured out what was wrong after the first few minutes of watching it. "Hey, Dad?" "Yes, son." "Isn't this the same football game that was playing 2 years ago? I could have sworn I've seen this before." "Nonsense. It's live right now. You must be imagining things." I guess. Peter was certain that he'd seen the game before, but didn't want to press the matter any further for fear of upsetting his father. It was a miracle they weren't angry with him when he suddenly showed up unannounced, and he didn't feel like pushing his luck too much. The grandfather clock that stood in the living room chimed with each passing hour. Peter could feel himself becoming more and more uneasy as time went on. The football game on the TV played out the exact same way he remembered it from 2 years ago. About halfway into the game, Peter caught a worrying scent in the air that nobody else seemed to notice. "Hey, Mom?" "Yes, dear." "Did you turn the stove off? I think I smell a gas leak." "Oh, don't worry about it. I've checked. It's probably just your imagination. Or maybe your brother had too many beans again." "Mom!" Everyone laughed the whole thing off. Peter joined in the laughter, but only because he didn't want to bring the mood down for everyone. Somewhere near midnight, the TV switched to a news story about an incident that happened in their town. The reporter spoke from their newsroom about a family of 4 dying in their home due to a gas leak. Though he didn't reveal their names or the location of the home, it felt like some sort of omen. But his family didn't seem to pay too much attention to it. Peter was about to ask his mother to double-check the gas again when the grandfather clock struck midnight with a deafening chime. The moment it did, all of the lights in the house went out. Thinking that there was something wrong with the power, Peter pulled out his phone and turned on the flashlight function. When the light illuminated the contents of the plate in his hand, he dropped it with a scream and stood up from his seat. Instead of the succulent turkey leg and wing he'd been happily snacking on for the past hour, a half-eaten dead rat laid on his plate. In his panic, he turned the light towards the couch where his family sat and immediately wished he didn't. His family was still there, but they were no longer the lively people he knew. Sitting on the couch were 4 decaying corpses that might have once been his family. The empty black eye sockets stared into his soul as their putrefied lips curled into sinister grins that revealed their rotting yellow teeth and the maggots wriggling in their gums. Peter's mother, or what was left of her, uttered the last words he would ever hear with a foul breath that smelled like death itself. "We've been waiting for you for so long." As a father of a daughter, this incident will haunt me for the rest of my life. My 16-year-old daughter, Emily, grew up to be the brightest young lady, and my wife, Rosalind, and I couldn't be prouder of her. Emily was so jolly that she made friends wherever she went. It was the month of November. Everyone was getting ready to celebrate the winter festivals coming our way. Our family celebrated Thanksgiving in my brother's farmhouse every year in Ohio, so we drove there a week before Thanksgiving to make some cheerful memories. One morning, I was headed to the bank to finish some important paperwork before leaving for Ohio, when I noticed a boy standing on the sidewalk facing our house and looking at the window of my daughter's room. He was smiling while staring at Emily's room. I was about to knock him out, thinking he was stalking her, but when I looked up, I saw Emily was standing in front of her window and waving at him with a blushed face. I realized now that they know each other, so it will be better to talk to Emily first before hurling on this boy. I left and decided to sit down with Emily and talk that night. After finishing dinner, Emily was heading upstairs. I stopped her and told her to sit next to me. I wanted to talk to you about that boy." "Who? What are you saying, Dad?" "Relax, Emily. You don't have to be afraid. I just wanted to know who he is." Her face turned red and she hesitated for some time. "Honey, don't be afraid. We just want the best for you. Come on, tell us about him," Rosalind added. "His name is Roland. He is in my class." "Okay. Where does he live?" 2 blocks away. His dad is the local sheriff." "Really? That's good. I know the sheriff. So how long are you guys friends?" "We met at a science fair. He is a nice guy, Dad. We like each other." "Okay. I don't have any issues, but we need to set some boundaries for your safety." No matter how much Rosalind mocked me for becoming a bit possessive about my daughter, it was natural. I set the common boundaries that any dad would to protect his teenage daughter in her growing years. Soon I started to see Roland walking Emily home after school. I couldn't find anything wrong with him, and being the sheriff's son, I was a bit relieved, thinking maybe he is better than other high school boys. One day I was coming home from work, and on my way, I stopped at the local department store to buy some necessary things before leaving for Thanksgiving. There I met the local sheriff, Mr. James Truman. He was shopping for some groceries as well. I walked up to him and said, "Hello, James." "Hey, how are you, David?" I am good. So, any plans for Thanksgiving?" "Not much. Going to stay home with my son, I guess." "Talking about your son, are you aware that he and my daughter are becoming friends now?" I expected him to be happy about it, but instead, his face turned all serious and he replied, "I see. What happened? Is something bothering you?" "No, just hoping they will be friends and nothing else." Saying this, he walked past me, and I felt very humiliated. I couldn't move for a few minutes as his sudden rude behavior caught me off guard. I came home and told my wife about this encounter. She too couldn't guess what could be the reason behind Sheriff James' off-putting attitude. I mean, both the kids belong to good families, then why did he seem so upset his son was going out with my daughter? I didn't tell Emily all about this because I didn't want to complicate things for her at such a young age. We started to pack for our trip, and slowly this matter slipped away from my mind. 2 nights before our trip to Ohio, Emily came to me and said she doesn't want to go to her uncle's farmhouse this year. I asked her why. Emily remained silent, keeping her face down. I asked if she wished to spend Thanksgiving with Ronald, and her face lit up immediately. I couldn't see my daughter sad, so I told her Ronald can come with us if he wants to. Emily ran to call him, but make sure his father agrees only then. The main reason why I allowed Ronald to tag along was to keep my daughter close and also not to break her heart in this vulnerable age. The next morning, Ronald came to my house. We talked about this entire trip thing, and I was stunned to see how confident he was. He was way more mature than half of the kids his age. He said his father has approved and he is ready to come with us. Without much ado, we hopped into the car and got on the road. Ronald was very well behaved, and my wife Rosalind kept saying the entire journey how cute they both looked. After driving for 3 hours, we reached Crystal Lake. The sun was about to set. A dying yellow light mixed with a blue night sky made the horizon look like a dream. My brother and his family greeted us in the house, and Emily introduced everyone to Ronald. To my surprise, Ronald won everyone over in a very short span. He was helping in the kitchen, playing with the kids, and also showed interest when we watched the game. It didn't feel at all like he was an outsider. Although he was settling completely well, I couldn't help but feel a bit weird about all this. Don't know why. Things were seeming too good to be true to me at that moment. As the night fell, we all sat down for dinner, and everyone was laughing and cheering. I was about to shove a big piece of beef steak in my mouth when my phone rang. I noticed it on the couch, so I got up and walked to get it. Everyone else didn't pay much attention to me and kept enjoying themselves. It was a call from an unknown number. As I picked it up, I could hear sirens of cop cars driving at fast speed as the sound of wind hovered through the phone speaker. "Hello? Who is it?" "David, you must listen to me. This is Sheriff Truman. Act calm and go somewhere where my son can't hear you. Please, don't ask any questions or take my name. Just do what I say." Even though I was confused like hell, my instinct said to follow the sheriff's instructions. Without expressing anything, I slowly walked out of the room to the back garden of the house. I closed the glass door behind me and no one noticed me. Ronald was laughing with everyone else. "I am alone now. What the hell is going on, James?" "Where is Ronald now?" "In the living room eating dinner with my family. Will you please tell me what's going on here?" "David, my son is a deranged psychopath, and the only reason I wanted to keep him away from your daughter was to keep them both safe. I know I should have done something earlier, but as a father, I kept on burying the vicious crimes he did since he was 4 years old. First, he killed his pet dog, and then started harming animals. But when he bludgeoned my wife to death knowing she was pregnant with another child, I realized what devil we had brought into this world. He can't share those whom he thinks as his close ones. I didn't permit him to travel with you guys, so he threatened me with a gun and tied me up in the basement. When I finally managed to set myself free, I noticed he was going with one of my guns. He has taken them all and going to murder your entire family to get Emily just for himself. You must stop him before becoming violent. Keep a close eye on him. I am coming to your place. I have already tracked down your location from this call. Just please, don't make him mad or he will snap out like a venomous snake." Saying all this in one go, the sheriff disconnected the call and I turned around with fearful eyes to my loving family, who was now seen laughing with a deranged murderer that has come with a plan to finish them all. I uttered to myself that I must keep calm and protect my family. I got inside and went straight to Ronald's room. My idea was to take the guns away, but as I opened his rucksack, I saw dozens of knives and other basic weapons, but the gun was missing. Seems like you and my dad both want to ruin my Thanksgiving this year. I turned back and found Ronald standing behind me with a gun. I lunged at him to take it away, but he dodged carefully and hit me on the head with the metal end of the gun. I fell unconscious on the floor with throbbing pain and heard Ronald say, "Happy Thanksgiving." I don't remember when I came back to my senses, but a squashy sound, followed by a metallic smell, started to take over my drowsy mind. I opened my eyes slowly and saw Emily tied up to a chair with a huge bruise on her head. She was unconscious as well. But as I laid my eyes around, I realized the danger is much bigger than this. All my family members, my wife, my brother, his wife, and his 2 kids were lying on the floor, bludgeoned to death. Yes, Ronald killed them all. What have you done? Oh, David, you're awake. Nothing. Just getting what is mine. My dad never understood me, but don't know why I think you will. I love your daughter, and I want her. I love her so much that I can't share her with anyone, not even her family. Not even you. He raised his gun at me once again, and just then the main door slammed open and I heard 6 gunshots back to back. Bullets pierced his chest like crazy, and he fell on the floor, vomiting blood. As his lifeless body fell on the ground, I saw Sheriff Truman standing behind him with his empty gun. That night, a father shot his son to save another father and his daughter. I surely lost my family at the hands of a psychopath, and this pain will never go away. But whenever I think about Truman, who will have to live with this realization that he killed his son, I find my suffering small compared to him. Emily and I don't celebrate Thanksgiving anymore because neither of us feel thankful about anything in this life anymore.